Welcome to the Ignition News. We love to have you here, but remember to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Click that like button, that subscribe button, and leave a comment below. It's going to be a great show. Welcome to the Ignition News. Let's get busy with the truth. Good morning. Welcome to the Ignition News. It is May 5th. I keep saying that it's April. Do you ever have that happen to you? When the start of the first or the start of the first part of the month, you get the months confused. Yeah, so it's May 5th today, 2026. It's good to have you joining us today. We have three stories today that I think highlight kind of exactly where we are as a country. But let's talk about some history. Still not quite recovered yet, but let's talk about some history from today, May 5th. In 1818, Karl Marx was born in Trier, Prussia. His work on capital and structural power remains a foundational text for analyzing the exploitation of the working class and the mechanics of corporate control. In 1886, the Bayview Massacre occurred in Milwaukee. That's when National Guardsmen fired upon workers marching for 8-hour workdays. And they killed 7 people. So this is a stark example of violence that has been used to protect corporate interests since the foundation of our country and, well, around the world. In 1893, the Panic of 1893 began as the New York Stock Exchange crashed. This actually led to the worst economic depression in the United States at that time, resulting in 15,000 business failures and a 20% unemployment. I do want to highlight, I the employment statistics for our current era, I think are wildly underreported because one of the things I think people don't realize is that once you no longer receive your unemployment benefits, you're technically not considered unemployed by your state or federal government. You're put into an entirely different bucket. So even though you may not have a job and perhaps worse, you have exhausted your unemployment benefits, you're actually not considered part of that unemployment statistic. This was one of the things that Donald Trump correctly identified in his 2016 campaign, the sentiment that the numbers the government reports about economic suffering and struggle were not matching up to the economic sentiment at the time. And I think it's something that our political leaders should pay attention to. Today is let's see. We got what other history do we have today? Oh, it's National Cartoonists Day. I think it's important to celebrate people who utilize their art, especially in this time of AI. It's National Astronaut Day. It's National Hoagie Day. It is, you remember yesterday was May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Today is Revenge of the 5th. I love it. It's a little play on Star Wars terminology for our Star Wars fans. And yeah, I told my wife she was drawing her eyebrows too high. She looked surprised. Let's get into the show, everybody. It's good to have you with us today. As a side note, no more eyebrow jokes. I'm getting the side eye. I can feel it. Do you ever look at your paycheck and wonder where it all went? Well, got 3 stories today to talk about what this government is doing with your money. Story 1 is the $1 billion ballroom. Do you remember when the president promised that the White House would cost taxpayers not one single dime? He said it repeatedly. Karen Levitt said it repeatedly. They said it loudly. It was the point of pride. It was one of the reasons it was actually prohibitively difficult to get access and information about the construction of the ballroom. It was all going to be private donors, not your money. Well, the price tag obviously kept getting bigger and bigger. I think at first they said it was $200 million, then $250, then $300 million, then $400 million. And they even kept the names of the people who donated private to protect them. Well, last week, the Senate Judiciary Committee actually tucked something into the Republican reconciliation package that is quite stunning. A $1 billion budget request. Taxpayer money for the ballroom for, quote, security adjustments and upgrades related to the ballroom. So they want $1 billion of your money to secure a $400 million building. And what was that whole bill stuffed into? $72 billion. $38 billion of that is for ICE. $26 billion of that is for CBP, Customs and Border Protection. and 2.5 billion for DHS. The entire package was framed around immigration enforcement, and they snuck a little $1 billion in there for security for the ballroom. 2 to 1. That's the margin of opposition in public polling against the ballroom project. I actually think it's much higher than that, going back to our earlier conversation about statistics. So you have all of these Americans all around our country struggling to pay bills, worrying about how they're going to afford to take their family on vacation this summer. And you've got the Republicans in Congress slipping in $1 billion for a ballroom. Let them eat cake. Story 2, the buffalo. This one's really sad. The American bison is the official mammal of the United States. Not sure if you are aware of that. It's actually on the seal of the Interior Department. I'm sure you've seen that. Now, that very same agency, the agency with that on the seal, is trying to get rid of it. Doug Burgum, who used to be my governor when I lived in the state of North Dakota, he is a former tech millionaire. He's a friend of Greg Gianforte, another tech millionaire. I think Gianforte is the guy that did the body slam on that reporter, if I'm not mistaken. And they just proposed canceling, pardon me with that cough still, canceling federal grazing leases for a herd of bison in northern Montana. That's 950 of these animals. Some of them have been grazing that same land for 20 years. The group that manages them is called American Prairie. They've been buying up ranches and federal leases in eastern Montana for over 2 decades, trying to restore the grassland ecosystem. They're trying to bring it back to a more natural habitat. Of course, the cattle ranchers do not like this. And that's not necessarily because the bison are causing any problems. It's because these conservationists who are buying up this land are causing the land value to increase. Now, obviously, that is actually a real problem. But here's the part that's not about the bison at all. When the leases get canceled, the cows move in. And the grazing fee for cattle on BLM land is about 90% cheaper than grazing on private land. So you're subsidizing these, in many cases, very wealthy cattle farmers to go on the land and graze for basically pennies on the dollar. And they also cause significant problems to the land. This is something we see a lot in the state of Nevada on land that BLM allows ranchers to graze on. It causes lots of problems. There's a Democrat running in Montana's first district. His name's Ryan Busey. And he said this: Gianforte is fine with oil companies doing whatever they want on public lands, but you got a bunch of bison walking around eating grass, and apparently that's a problem. It's a threat. The legal argument for the administration is they're basically saying bison cannot qualify for a federal grazing permit because they're not being raised for production-oriented purposes. They're saying bison can't graze because they're not livestock. The official mammal of our country, it is classified now as ineligible to exist on public land because it is not being raised for you to eat. Think about that. It's hard to think of a more brutal metaphor for capitalism versus the public interest than that one. The bison basically don't exist because you can't kill them to eat them. Environmental groups are warning this is not going to stop in Montana if this goes through. There are also bison grazing permits in Colorado, New Mexico, and the Dakotas. Tribal nations across the American West have spent literally decades rebuilding herds after the near extermination of the species in the 19th century. Again, something that we seem to have forgotten. And now all of that activism, all that conservation is literally in the crosshairs. And let me be very clear. We have to balance the needs of the small American family farmer, but we also have to recognize that some of these massive cattle productions and some of these massive ranchers are literally almost billionaires themselves. And their access, wealth, and privilege allows them to do things that, well, you can't do, especially if you're a bison and you can't get a lawyer. This is a really brutal metaphor. It's a brutal metaphor for what this country is becoming. Public land, literally the national symbol being the bison, the national mammal, public institution being sold for pennies on the dollar so a bunch of cows can eat grass or whatever is on that land and destroy the land. In Nevada, when this happened, by the way, this is I keep bringing this up. The Bundys, very, very famous family, caused a lot of problems. You may remember the federal standoff with the Bundys. they had this problem. And number one, they didn't even, as I recall, they didn't even pay their grazing bill. So that would be the first problem. They let their cows graze on this land and they didn't even pay their bill. And then they had all these standoffs, not only in Nevada, but also, I think it was in Oregon. Do you remember that? The wildlife standoff? The point being, we continue to allow people who genuinely don't care about this country to access and use these resources to literally destroy them and then to kind of spit in our faces. And I think it's disgusting. Speaking of affordability, this is a story I've been tracking for a long time, but I wanted to bring it to your attention because it's something that is definitely hidden from you in terms of access to information. This was a piece that actually came from Reuters out of the Beijing Auto Show. You probably do know that the average price of a new car in the United States right now is $51,456. That's probably not a surprise to you. I remember my first new car that I got that was affordable. It was a Saturn Ion. I want to say it was like $14,000. Crazy cheap for a car when you think about it. For that same amount of money, though, for $51,456, you could get a car in China. Well, not a car. You could get 5 brand new electric vehicles in China. The top selling one is a Geely subcompact hatchback called the EX2. It was the single best selling car of any kind in China last year, and its price tag was just over $10,000. And 14-mile range that it has. It's got a big, huge touchscreen. It's got a frunk or front trunk and a huge, roomy interior. An auto analyst told Reuters, when you get in, you do not feel like you are in a small car. It feels better in terms of its quality and bigger in terms of its size, all for $10,000. Now, of course, you cannot buy that car. None of these cars are for sale in American showrooms because there is a 100% tariff import on Chinese IV or Chinese EVs. IVs, what am I talking about? This was actually imposed under the Biden administration. It has been kept and expanded under Trump, but even at $20,000, think about that. You could pay the 100% tariff and you'd still be getting a screaming good deal for a brand new car. But the reality is, no one is going to risk that importing of that vehicle, that gigantic tariff, which is paid on the front end by the people who import them. The rest of the world, however, has access to this affordable vehicle. And what's going to happen as a result of this is that because we are using the American sort of political might to protect American auto manufacturers, we're simply going to get left behind. And I'm not the person saying that, by the way. The person saying it is actually Jim Farley. He publicly called BYD, Chinese largest auto manufacturer, the best in class on cost, supply chain, manufacturing, and intellectual property. And then he's been trying to reorient Ford's entire strategy around the cost model from China. But one of the issues that American auto manufacturers have is, let's just take your American vehicle. Let's say you have a Ford. We have a Ford. Love the Ford. It's a very good car. But one of the issues in America is we've bifurcated and fractured our manufacturing. So that Ford might have, for example, a control processing unit that's made by one company in Detroit and a steering unit that's made by another company in, let's just say, Texas. And it might have a computer processor that is made in another company in, let's just say, California. I'm just using examples here. And the thing about it is, all of those components not only have to be made by different companies and are made by different companies, and yes, they do create jobs, but then they all have to talk to each other. And auto companies have to spend all this time, energy, resources, and infrastructure bringing in all these separate components, getting them to work together, getting them to talk together. And of course, those create massive points of failure. This is not necessarily the case for Chinese automakers. BYD can source and create all of these components or work closely with literally the best manufacturing outputs in the entire world, something that, by the way, Apple created. We're going to talk about that in a later show. They get them all to work together faster, quicker, and more efficiently. And again, I'm telling you this because when you combine this with the rapid advances that China has made in, let's just say, automation, the use of AI, obviously, what we're doing is we're just putting the blindfolds on and paying 5 times more for a new vehicle, and we're just watching the world get ahead of us. The tariff that was imposed by Biden did not help American auto manufacturers. It just stopped the bleeding. It did not make American cars more competitive or more affordable. You're paying $51,000 for a new car, and you're paying for it in terms of your access to the future. So you got $1 billion ballroom. You got the national mammal kicked off of public lands, so cattle ranchers get a 90% discount. Then you got a 100% tariff on cars that did not create or save a single American job, but does make sure that you don't have access to an affordable vehicle. And these are not failures. These are all choices. Every single one of them was a choice. And the problem is, with these choices, you are always the one left holding the bill. The system is working as designed, and you're falling farther and farther behind. I really encourage you to check out some of the innovations coming in China. The reason I say this is quite simple. If you're not educated to what is happening outside of this country, which really the United States of America is more like 53rd world countries stacked on top of each other, but that's a topic for another show. If you're not taking the time to educate yourself about some of the advances being made outside of the world, you are allowing this government and this manufactured consent to keep you blindfolded. You're not seeing what is possible and indeed what is probable. What as we demonize country, we demonize China as America. We demonize these advances. We demonize every country that's not America. Let's be honest with us. Meanwhile, we're getting put farther and farther behind. And the reality is, if you're my age or younger, you're probably younger. It's not necessarily me or you that is going to feel the worst of this. It's our children. They are the ones who are going to be left farther and farther behind. So let us see what we can do to catch them up. That's the show for today, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday. It is May 5th. It's Revenge of the 5th. We'll see you back tomorrow.